And then this wine is nearest and dearest to my heart. So my cellar is actually an old bomb shelter, which is perfect. There's no light and it's humid. In fact, it floods sometimes. So I have rubber boots right next to the entrance in case it's flooded. Sometimes there's about 4 or 5 inches of water. I'm going to show you what I got. Let's go. I had to put a gate at the entrance because a cat and a dog would sometimes sneak in here since it's dark and cool and poop on the floor. Ugh. Here it is. Even though it's not hot out, it's super humid. I'm already sweating. I haven't done a count recently because I don't keep track, but I think I have 400 to 500 bottles in here. I think right now between my cellar, the samples in the studio, everything that's lying around, there's about 1,200 to 1,500 bottles of wine here. I get sent so many samples to be considered for review, sometimes up to 1,000 bottles a year, so my workstation is just filled with wine all the time. My studio is just got so much wine all over the place. I know a lot of wine friends that work in the wine business and spouses complain. People that collect wine, it's kind of addicting. You never really drink more than you buy. Usually people are just buying, and the cellar grows. I'm just getting more and more samples, so the cellar continues to grow, and sometimes I get duplicates, so I store them here or I give them away. I also get sent lots of argon gas cartridges from Corvins, almost like I never drink wines from the cellar. Oftentimes, if I do drink, I drink samples that I've reviewed, but then again, I don't really drink that much at home because when you're tasting all day, sometimes that's the last thing you want to do. Wine is awesome, but at the end of the day, it is work. The cellar floods often, several times throughout the year. In fact, 6 months ago, these wood legs rotted out and the shelf fell down. I lost about 12 bottles. I went to the lumber yard, got some treated wood, and then bolted it into place. If you go to a lot of cellars, most wines are stored on their sides or maybe slightly up so the sediment falls to the bottom. I read an article a few years ago about how there's enough humidity between the top fill of the wine and the cork, so that should be enough to keep the cork moist. Especially here, the cellar is super humid. Also, if I store them upright, I can put more bottles in. It's easier to get to what I want. But then again, like I said, I'm not pulling from the cellar that much, so maybe it doesn't matter. Who knows? The good thing about this shelf rotting and breaking is I had to take all the wines out and put them back in, and I could organize them a little bit. This section is Italy. I would say that Italian wines probably represent the biggest proportion of my cellar, followed by unique Eastern European countries. I bring bottles back in my suitcase on trips or when I visit if they mean something special to me. Italy was my first love when it came to fine wine, so that's where it is. Let's take a look and see what I got here. This is exciting for me too. Oh, my first ever trip to a wine region, and I guess it was the mark of me stepping into wine professionally. I was a practicing chiropractor in Southeast Asia. I took a sabbatical to travel around the world, and that eventually became my wine writing and then YouTubing career. My first stop in a wine region was Piedmont because Barolo Barbarescos were some of the first fine wines I fell in love with. This is a producer that's way under the radar. The wines always kick some serious butt, especially in blind tastings. Adriano Marco e Vittorio, this is the Bazzarin Barbaresco 2011. They also make a Riserva, which is just killer. In fact, I did a tasting with my collector friends a while ago about Piedmont Reds, and that was one of the best wines of the tasting. Barbaresco, I generally prefer to Barolo because you can get fantastic value for money. You can still find some gem producers as Nebbiolo prices keep going up, so this is worth checking out. This was off the same trip. I remember I went to Barolo, then Barbaresco, and shipped 2 cases back. This is the Pasquale Pellicero Barbaresco Ciabat Riserva 2010, great vintage. Run by a lady, her father founded the winery, and everything was dedicated to her papa. She was super passionate. I thought it was excellent. At the same time, I was going to different communes. What happens when you go to places in Italy, the different communes and wine regions or different villages will sometimes have their own enoteca, their own wine shop. And when I went to Serralunga, I believe that this is the Franco Conterno Pietrin Barolo 2009. Good vintage, not as great as 2010. Conterno is a big name in Barolo, but a different Conterno, although a lot of them are all related. I remember this was good value for money. Oh, this is from Monforte, near Serralunga. Monforte and Serralunga wines, they're usually a little bit bigger, so I'll probably keep this in the cellar for a little bit longer. I also have a different philosophy when it comes to wine collecting, when it comes to price. When you get in the $25 to $30, let's say $30 now with prices rising, $30 to $50, you can drink some of the great wines of the world without breaking your bank. If you fight hard, you know what you're looking for. You're either educated in wine or you know a shop owner that will point you in the right direction. I know a lot of my friends that are in the wine business that have cellars, especially from Europe, because most of my wine writer friends are from Europe. They'll have big cellars, but they don't have ridiculously expensive wines. I don't have really ridiculous expensive wines here. I don't have first growths. I do have some wines that are a little more expensive and near and dear to me, and I'll show you some of them. I know several years ago there was a video on Munchies about Steven Spurrier, the late great Steven Spurrier, who I was very fond of. I've actually got a little tipsy with him a few times. He's always been kind to me, so when he passed, it hit me pretty hard. But in that video, he talks about when he bought the wines on release, he wasn't buying them from an investment. The most he spent was 50 pounds, which back then was probably about 80 bucks on release, and which is a lot already, but you don't need to spend a ton to get a great bottle of wine. For a lot of wine collectors are buying 12 bottle cases, and the rule of thumb is you'll probably drink 3 bottles too young. If you're lucky, 6 bottles at the right time, and then 3 bottles past the peak. I'm at the end of the millennial generation where we want a little bit more diversity. I don't buy 6 to 12 bottle cases. I think in the cellar, the most I have of a single wine is maybe 3 bottles. For me, there's an endless amount of diversity in wine. That's when I want to drink from. I don't need to be drinking the same wine over and over again. Although, one could argue you have much different experiences with wine when you taste it through different stages of its evolution. Wow, I found some wines, some of the wines that mean the most to me. Friuli Venezia Giulia in northern Italy is one of my favorite regions of the world. Big white wines, fantastic reds. This is probably what's considered one of the most culty, expensive producers, Miani, made in tiny quantities. Makes like 15,000, 20,000 bottles a year. I know that Australia only gets 1 case. I used to go see him every year. He's like a farmer. You can only go after 6 o'clock. When the sun starts to set, he comes in on his tractor. He loves whites, although he makes great reds. I have the Pederin Robola Gialla 2015. These wines age, they're barrel fermented white wines. In fact, his Sauvignon is one of the greatest Sauvignons I've ever tasted, along with Silex and Puy Fumé. Also, his Chardonnay Barraca is like Grand Cru Burgundy. Unfortunately, I don't have any bottles of that. He also makes the greatest Merlot that I've ever tasted. Better than Petrus, better than Cheval Blanc, which is actually the wine most memorable Merlot-based wine I've liked. This is the Miani Philippe Single Vineyard Merlot 2013. I'm waiting to share this with somebody special. These wines are hard to get your hands on. They're rare and they become expensive when you get to the secondary and third market. But I know that the Philippe Merlot is probably a $300-400 bottle, which is pretty insane. I think the whites go for like $150 a bottle. So these are some of the more expensive wines I have in the cellar. Let's take a little break from Italy because Italy's my big love. We'll come back to it. I show you my most prized bottle in the cellar a little bit later. I know a lot of people hear me talk about Riesling, how it's my favorite wine grape in the world. Unfortunately, I don't have a ton of Riesling in the cellar because I tend to drink it all. I have, let's see here, I found a few. This is one of my favorite producers in the Pfalz. This is the Von Winning Reiterfad Riesling. This is a Erste Lager, a Premier Cru. Von Winning is really unique because all the Rieslings are barrel fermented. Reiterfad is fantastic every single vintage. I harp and tell people, man, you don't need to buy Grosses Gewachs, the best, most expensive Rieslings. I think you buy Erste Lager, the Premier Cru, or the Ortswein, which is the village wine. They offer tremendous value for money. And when you're in Germany, the Rieslings are so cheap. It's ridiculous. I do have one Grosses Gewachs. I have the Wittmann Kirchspiel Westhofen Riesling Grosses Gewachs 2022. These are getting ridiculous, like 150 bucks. I needed some Rieslings from Wittmann for an upcoming video, and I only needed one, but they sent me several, so I'm going to put this away and keep it for a few years. Wittmann makes the most memorable dry Riesling I've ever had, the Moorstein. I remember back in 2019, I stayed in Germany for 2 months just because I wanted to learn about Riesling. I was visiting about 3 producers a day. They taught me so much about canopy management. One of the more educational 2 months of my life in terms of wine. So I'm going to hold on to that. Also, wines I wish I had more of, but I just drink too much, is I love sweet Cabernet Riesling. This is the Armand Riesling Cabernet. This is from Von Buhl 2022. These are like adult lemonade. They're so tart, they're so fresh, they're so delicious. And in Germany, they're like nothing, like 12 to 15 bucks a bottle. In US, maybe 20, 25, but I think they offer tremendous value for money. It's literally a wine you can drink the entire day. It's so delicious and refreshing. It's the cool thing about wine. Wine's got a little bit like a time capsule. It's fun seeing what is back here because it sparks up some memories. I have here a wine from Montenegro. When I first did my Balkan road trip, I traveled through the Balkans for several months visiting all the producers. I thought it was fantastic. Then I lived there part of the year. I have the Bouc Marseillan. Marseillan's a cross between Cabernet Sauvignon and Grenache. I remember going up in the mountains, way up in the mountains in Montenegro, finding this small producer, and he opened some older bottles, and I thought this wine was delicious. It's not the greatest wine in the world, but it's a very good wine. That's the fun thing about collecting wine. You don't have to collect all trophies, you collect fun stuff. Another thing where my wine career started, Armenia and Georgia. This is the Zora Karasi, probably the most notable wine coming out of Armenia. This is made of the grape Areni, 2013. The 2009, I think their first vintage ever was, I think, on Bloomberg's top 10 wines of the year or something like that. I can't remember if it was Bloomberg's or another publication. I know they'll correct me on that. I have this wine I just got last year. This is the Alaverdi Monastery Ricazzatelli 2015. This is made by monks. I got this while I was shooting video in Georgia last year. I got pretty toasty at lunch with a bunch of monks.
Getting blasted at lunch. Oh, gosh.
And the Archbishop, which was a pretty amazing experience, and I brought this bottle back to share it with me. I was going to share this with somebody special, but not anymore, I guess. I also have 4 wines here that mean a ton to me. This is considered one of the greatest red wines coming out of Serbia and maybe all of ex-Yugoslavia. This is a producer called Mataja. This is the Kramen Kamen Cabernet Sauvignon 2012. This wine won like tons of awards, like Best of Show all over. It's considered like one of the greatest Serbian wines ever made. I have a vertical of the first 3 vintages he made of this, 11, 12, and 13. Still making it in excellent vintages. I think I saw this wine in Belgrade because it's so rare. He doesn't even have any. Maybe I should even sell. I think this wine was like $300 or $500 now. On release, back then it was like 30. I think now it's like $60 or something like that for the current release. Another wine here from the neighbor, Croatia. This is the Boškinac 2013. This is also a Bordeaux blend. The restaurant's awesome. Just got a Michelin star, Boris. Congratulations. But the late, great Anthony Bourdain did an episode about coastal Croatia, and he went to this winery, and he's sitting there drinking the wine, eating the food. And this, I remember in one scene, he looks over at his fixer, the guy that was hosting me, he said,
which is saying something, believe me.
This wine is awesome, right?
Yeah, it is. This is a Cab Merlot. This is a type of wine I want to drink for the rest of my life.
Yeah, me too.
Going back to Serbia, this is the Ivanovic number 1 half. This is 50% Prokupac, and the rest is Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. Prokupac is one of my favorite grapes in the world. I even did a big blind tasting video on this. This guy's considered like one of the godfathers of Serbian wine, modern Serbian wine, and he died during COVID, which is quite sad. His son's doing a good job, but I'm glad I still have this bottle. I don't know when I'm going to open it up. Another wine that hits near dear to my heart from Croatia. You can see it's a little bit moldy. This is the Koronica Grand Taran 2012. One of the best wines, I think, coming out of Croatia. Taran is the grape variety, high acid, high fruit. Reminds me of a kind of a cross between Barbera and Sangiovese. And when it ages like great Chianti Classico. This is consistently one of my favorite wines in Croatia, and I'm glad I have 2 bottles of this 12, so I'm happy about that. Let's move to some of the countries you know about. I don't have tons of diversity in French wine. I mostly have Rhone and Bordeaux. I'd like to have more Burgundy. I just really can't afford it. We're going to get to Bordeaux, but if you want to hang out with myself and like-minded wine people, I invite you to check out channel memberships. Every month I'll be doing a live hangout tasting. Members in the Grand Reserve, the 2nd tier, will be able to come up on screen, share their wines, their thoughts with me and other fellow wine lovers. I did the first one and we had a blast. I'm also launching a live video podcast series, and members in that Grand Reserve tier will be able to come on screen and ask a question, almost like calling into a live radio show. Check out the join button next to the subscribe button, and I'll leave a link in the comments below. I have 3 Bordeaux wines from the same ownership, and they're wines I really like. This is just killer value for money. The Chateau Lillian Ladouis from Saint Estèphe 2018, riper, approachable vintage in Bordeaux. This wine, I've seen it as in France you can get for like 15 euros. In America it's anywhere from 20 to 30 bucks. When it ages, it tastes like just outstanding Bordeaux. This is the Bordeaux I would buy cases of. Let's see it. The other two here I have by the same ownership. I think they're ridiculous value money. The Chateau Lafon Rocher from Saint Estèphe neighboring, and the Chateau d'Yssen from Margaux, both 2018s. I don't know what the retails are on these wines. I think they come in anywhere 50, 60 bucks, but they offer ridiculous value for money. I think d'Yssen is a third growth, or maybe, yeah, third growth. I think Lafon Rocher is a fourth or a fifth growth. You don't have to spend a lot in Bordeaux to get excellent wines. But I do have, let's see, I do have some nicer wines. I have a Magnum. I used to have 3 of these from Chateau Cos d'Estournel. This is the Pagoda de Cos 2015, also from Saint Estèphe, Left Bank, based on Cabernet Sauvignon. I actually won this in a wine writing contest. I had a few bottles, one I drank, one I gave away as a gift, and I still have one left. And you can see that this is moldy a little bit because this was affected by the flood. This fell down when the cellar flooded, but luckily the bottle didn't break, thank goodness. I don't like to age my Bordeaux for super long. I think 10 years, that's when you kind of get the sweet spot. That's when you have still the fresh fruit, but you get the tertiary flavors. Here is the Chateau d'Ampuis Côte Rôtie 2018 from Guigal. I love Côte Rôtie. I love Syrah. Again, I just don't drink it enough. I think these wines are really ridiculously expensive now, like 250 bucks. And Côte Rôtie's aged so well, so I'll hold on to that for a while. And red wines often, they don't age as well as you expect. I've said this on the channel many times. I'm actually moved more by aged white wines when it comes to dry wines most of the time. Sweet wines, fortified wines almost always age well, but I can't count the number of times we've opened an old aged red and it was kind of disappointing. Let's see here. I don't have American wines, which I have plenty. I don't actually sell a lot of Napa Cabernet. I actually give away a lot of Napa Cabernet that I get because people want to taste it. I think I have here, I got a lot of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Let's take a look here. Okay, people know on the channel, Santa Barbara County is my favorite region in America, maybe one of my favorite regions in the world. I have 2 of my favorite Chardonnay producers. This is the Liquid Farm White Hill Chardonnay 2015, made more of a Chablis style blend of several vineyards. These are excellent wines. I prefer the Golden Slope. It's a little bit bigger. White Hill sometimes is way too lean and acidic upon release, but man, they age well. One producer I think is just amazing is Dierberg. This is the Drum Canyon Vineyard Chardonnay 2019. Ooh, this is ready to drink probably. These wines don't break the bank. I think both these like 50, 60 bucks. I know it's expensive, but not ridiculously expensive. Let's see a couple. I got some Pinot Noirs here, but I think these wines, these 2 mean a lot to me. I have the A Priori Cabernet Sauvignon Reserve from Napa Valley 2014. Back in 2018, I believe, I was selected to be part of the Professional Wine Writers Symposium in Meadowood of Napa Valley. So they give you a gift when you check in, and this is one of the gifts. This along with a Marival Cabernet Franc I have somewhere, I can't find it. Around that same time, I think I went to Virginia to visit a friend. I went to the wineries to visit, and this is like the cult winery of Virginia. This is the RDV Lost Mountain 2011. It's a Bordeaux blend. Back then, I think it was expensive. I think it was like $100, but I think it's a lot more now. And I think Chateau Montrose just bought them, or some Bordeaux property just bought them. I don't know when I'm going to open that, but I'm excited to see how this tastes. Maybe I'll open up with my collector friends. I don't have a ton of champagne or bubbles because I drank them all too fast. All right, let's move on here. Let me just rearrange this. Oh, let's see what, I actually forgot I had some of these. I have Weingut Timent from Südsteiermark, Southern Styrian, Austria. This is the Ried Grasnitzberg Sauvignon Blanc 2019. South Styria is one of the great regions for Sauvignon Blanc that a lot of people don't know about, and these wines age super well. Again, as you see, not super old stuff. Oh, rummaging around, I guess I do have an old wine, and it's not even mine. This is the birth year of my father. My grandmother bought it for him on his birth year, 1949. This is a Quien Dry White Bordeaux. Look at the color on this bad boy. Not even mine, it's my dad's. He's still alive. You can see they're not like a lot of trophy wines because it's not an investment for me. These are wines I want to share, I want to drink. 4 of my most prized bottles here are sentimental reasons. They're a little more expensive, but it's more for sentimental reasons. First, I have the San Leonardo 2016. This is a Bordeaux blend from northern Italy, made by the late, great Giacomo Takis, who also created Sassicaia. San Leonardo is a throwback to kind of old school Bordeaux blends. You see 13% alcohol, lower in alcohol, more savory. Has about 20% Carmenere in the blend. The reason that I held on to this bottle is I went to visit them after I spoke at Wine to Wine a few years ago in Verona in Italy. And I went to visit Guillermo because I've been a big fan of these wines. We did a mini vertical tasting. Some of the wines were just spectacular, but the 16 for young wines were killer. I'm going to hold on to this. I'm probably not going to drink this for another 3-4 years, but man, this is just killer wine. Awesome wine. I think you can find them anywhere from, in the US, 80 to 120 bucks. I know it's expensive, but that's killer wine. Another, I love Sangiovese. As you know, it's my favorite red wine grape in the world. I just don't keep a lot of it because I drink a lot of it. This is one of my favorite producers in all of Italy. This is the Boscarelli Vino Nobile de Montepulciano. Not a Chianti Classico, not a Brunello. Costa Grande 2016. Again, like the San Leonardo 2016 is a great vintage in all of Europe, and Italy especially. Anything you see 16 reds and whites, scoop it up because the wines are fabulous. This is just, I love Boscarelli's style because they're a little bit bigger, a little riper, but they're not trying to be Brunello. They're not trying to be anything that they're not. They are what they are. And then my two wines that are most memorable to me, including the one that I hold nearest and dearest to my heart. One here is Borgo di Tiglio. This is the Ronco della Chiesa 2015. This is 100% Friulano from a single vineyard. When I first went to Friuli, Venezia Giulia, I remember visiting Borgo di Tiglio. Nicola, the winemaker owner, sat down. I remember one of my friends was like, that guy looks legit. Fantastic barrel fermented whites, although he makes some good reds too. This is just killer wine. I don't know when I'm going to drink this. This is not cheap. I don't know what the price retail is now. Back then when I bought it, it was like 50 euros, 50 bucks in the cellar, but that was a long time ago. And then this wine is nearest and dearest to my heart. In Collio, in Friuli Venezia Giulia, it's home to Radicon, Gravner, two producers that are credited for bringing orange wines kind of back into the public eye. This is the Radicon Ribolla Gialla 2001. I remember when I visited, Stanko Radicon had just died just a year earlier. That was the founder. His son Sasha now took over. And his wife, we went through a tasting. We bought several bottles of wine. The wines are stellar. They're old school. They're macerated. They're aged for a long time. They're a little bit crazy for some people. They don't use sulfur, or Stanko didn't use sulfur. I think Sasha's starting to use sulfur now. But I think Stanko used sulfur until 2001, 2002. I remember when I drank 2002, like this was like 6 years ago, the hairs on my arm stood up. And I remember when I walked out after we bought a case, Susanna ran out and gave us a gift, this 2001, and I want to drink this, but I don't really know who to drink it with, so this is my most prized bottle in the cellar. So that's a little quick cellar tour. Do you have a big collection of wines? What are some of your most prized bottles? I'd love to hear. Drop it in the comments below.